Hi friends, welcome to SNCA Study Club, a platform for CA final students. So question number 5. There should be sufficient liaison between a principal auditor and other auditor. Discuss the above statements and state in this context of the reporting consideration when the auditor uses the work which has been performed by other auditor. So which is stating that there should proper liaison in between the principal auditor and other auditor. This is what required to be expressed as per this question. We have to answer this, whether it is required, whether such a coordination or liaison in between these two auditors is required. So before discussing that, we have to understand SA 600, that is using the work of other auditor. So only we will be able to answer this question if we understand what SA 600, which is stating that using the work of other auditor. It is also lays down the procedure that is to be applied in situations where principal auditor reporting on the financial statement which has been audited by the other auditor. Okay, that is, this is mainly applicable when principal auditor is required to express an opinion on the financial statement that include financial information of a component that is audited by other auditor. Okay, so first of all we have to understand who is a principal auditor and who is other auditor. Okay, principal auditor. Principal auditor is responsible to express an opinion on the financial information of an entity that include financial information of one or more components which has been audited by other auditor. Example, this is the company. Okay, this is a company ABC Limited. This is having what? This is different offices, suppose different branches, different subsidiary, different joint venture, associate or different divisions over India. So this is operating through all these branches and as well as all these divisions. So this may include, that is the financial statement of ABC Limited include all those financial information which has been obtained to it from division, branch, subsidiary, joint venture, associate, etc. So here the auditor who has been appointed to audit the financial statement of ABC Limited is also required to examine the financial information of all these components, mainly for the purpose of expressing an opinion whether the financial statement is free from the risk of, or that is giving true and fair view of the state of affairs of the company, and whether it is free from the risk of material misstatement. So first we have to understand who is a principal auditor. I have already explained. Principal auditor means auditor who is responsible to express an opinion on the financial information that include financial information of one or more component. That is, it can be one or more, audited by other auditor. Then who is other auditor? The next question, who is an other auditor? Other auditor means who is responsible to express an opinion on the financial information of a component. Okay, of a component which is included, that is the component information is included in the financial information that is required to be audited by the principal auditor. That is, suppose he is the other auditor. ABC's branch B is situated here, and the other auditor is responsible to express an opinion on the financial statements of B entity. Okay, so this is the financial statement. So normally these financial statement will be also included in the financial information of ABC Limited. So other auditor means auditor who is responsible to express an opinion on the financial statement or financial information of a branch which is included in the financial statement which is audited by principal auditor. I hope you understand who is principal auditor and who is other auditor. So the next question is, can principal auditor, that is can principal auditor use the work of other auditor while expressing an opinion on the financial statement? This is the question. Answer, there is no restriction. They may use the work of what? Principal auditor. Sorry, other auditor. That is, principal auditor may use the work of other auditor, but they have some conditions. We know that principal auditor is responsible to express an opinion on the financial statement, right? So he may use the work of other auditor. In that case, the sole responsibility is with the principal auditor. Principal auditor cannot state that it was if he is not in a position to correctly, that is, if he is not in a position to state what is happening in that entity through the audit report, he can't blame other auditor. Sole responsibility is with the principal auditor. So for that purpose, principal auditor is required to consider these following aspects. Okay. Significance of the findings. We know that other auditor is also required to perform audit procedures so as to obtain sufficient and appropriate audit evidence with respect of the matters regarding the financial information of the component. So auditor shall identify that significant events which has been identified by the other auditor. Then the principal auditor is also required to determine whether the work which has been performed by other auditor is adequate or not. This is also required to be determined by the principal auditor. Then effect. How it will affect the work of principal auditor, whether it will positively or negatively affect. These are also required to be determined by the principal auditor. So in short, principal auditor shall determine what? Adequacy of the work which has been performed by other auditor, significant findings that has been obtained by the other auditor, how it will affect the work of the principal auditor. So after considering all these matters, he may use the work of other auditor, but sole responsibility is with the principal auditor. One more thing. Principal auditor is also required to determine the evidence that has been obtained by the other auditor, assumption that has been made by the other auditor, source that has been used by other auditor to obtain audit evidence. Then what? Whether they have been complied with statutory legal requirements. Statutory requirements. Then whether they have performed their work as per relevant essays. Whether they have been obtained sufficient appropriate information with respect of the operation of internal control system of the component. So these are also required to be determined by whom? Our principal auditor. So they have to determine the significant findings, that is whether there existing risk of material misstatement that has been identified by the other auditor, whether they identified any abnormal transaction, abnormal or huge amount of purchase, or whether they identified any deficiency in the internal control system. Plus they also have to determine the assumption that has been used by other auditor, source of information, that is from which are the sources through which they obtain audit evidence, whether it is reliable, then whether they have been complied with the statutory requirements, and whether they have applied relevant essay, or whether they have performed the audit as per relevant essay. So all these have to be considered by the principal auditor. If he feels so, that if he thinks that it can be used by him, he can use, but sole responsibility is with the principal auditor. Okay, then what is your opinion? Whether it is required to have proper coordination in between the principal auditor and other auditor? Yeah, there should exist what? Proper coordination in between the principal auditor and as well as other auditor. Okay. So there should exist proper coordination in between the principal auditor and as well as other auditor. Then what? It is stating that principal auditor is required to ensure proper communication in between other auditor. There should be a written communication exist in between them, through which the principal auditor can communicate matters which is relevant to other auditor, and other auditor is also required to communicate the matter that is relevant to principal auditor. So what? Communication. First thing is communication. Other auditor is also required to perform audit procedure or the audit engagement within the timetable, that is within the time that has been allotted to him. Then other auditor also required to comply with relevant statute, that is compliance requirement have to be ensured, that is they have to perform the audit procedure with respect of that. So there should exist what? Proper coordination in between the principal auditor and other auditor, that is there should exist a liaison in between the principal auditor and other auditor. If principal auditor identify any matter which is relevant to other auditor, they should communicate, and if other auditor identify anything that is important to principal auditor, they should communicate. Then they have to, other auditor shall comply the audit engagement or the audit procedure within the timetable, that is within the allocated time to him. Then they should perform the audit engagement in compliance with relevant statute and other requirements, and they should perform the audit procedure as per the requirements of relevant standard. Okay, then what? My next question is, suppose the principal auditor is stating that work of other auditor cannot be used for the purpose of expressing an opinion on the financial statement. That is, he had performed several audit procedure and he arrived at a conclusion that work of other auditor is inappropriate for the purpose of expressing an opinion, and he is stating that he, that is the concerned principal auditor, is not in a position to identify the matters or to express an opinion with respect of the component, or they are not in a position to perform audit evidence of the component. It is indirectly stating that what the work of other auditor is inappropriate. In that case, he may issue modification to the audit report. It can be qualified opinion or disclaimer of opinion because it is putting a limitation on the scope of audit. So this is what SA 600. First of all, we have understand who is a principal auditor and who is other auditor. Principal auditor means auditor who is responsible to express an opinion on the financial statements of an entity that is contain financial statement of one or more components which has been audited by other auditor. Then other auditor. Other auditor means auditor who is responsible to express an opinion on the financial statements of an entity, of a component that contain the financial information which is required to be audited or which is audited by principal auditor. Then principal auditor may use the work of other auditor subject to the following condition. That is, the sole responsibility is with the principal auditor. He have to identify the significant findings by the other auditor, adequacy of work which has been performed by other auditor, then effect, that is how it will affect the principal auditor's work. That is, if principal auditor is using the work of other auditor, how it will affect the efficiency and effectiveness of his work. Then he also required to determine whether other auditor has obtained sufficient appropriate audit evidence. If obtained, which are the sources, whether it is relevant and reliable, which are the assumption that has been used by other auditor, whether they have been complied in with the relevant statute, that is statutory requirements, whether they have applied relevant essay, whether the internal control system of the entity which has been audited by other auditor is operating efficiently and effectively. These have to be determined by principal auditor. There should exist a proper communication between principal auditor and other auditor. If principal auditor is arriving at a conclusion after performing audit procedures that the work of other auditor is inappropriate, or he is not in a position to obtain sufficient and appropriate audit evidence with respect of the component which has been audited by other auditor, he may issue modification to the audit report, and that is, he can issue qualified report or disclaimer of opinion. Then what? Because it is putting a limitation on the scope of audit. This is what SA 600. We are moving towards question number 5. Actually, we have already discussed the answer of question number 5, but for your reference, I am going to explain one more. Okay, my dears, here I have provided the answer to the question whether it is required to have a proper liaison in between the principal auditor and other auditor. So, answering pattern. Actually, I have written the entire format but not full answer, the format and important points that you have to be highlighted. Okay, first of all, you required to explain what SA 600. I have already explained it, right? That is SA 600 using the work of what? Other auditor. That is, it is mainly lays down the procedure, that is SA 600 lays down the procedure to be applied in situations where principal auditor reporting on the financial statement of an entity that is using the work of other auditor, right? So SA 600 lays down the audit procedure that has to be performed by the principal auditor when he is required to express an opinion on the entity, on the financial statements of an entity that is using the work of other auditor. That is, they are using both the work of X and as well as Y. So whether X is required to cooperate with Y or no, these are the matters that is going to be discussed. So we have already discussed that they may use the work of other auditor, but sole responsibility is with the principal auditor. So these have the second point that is required to be considered, or that is required to be highlighted while answering. Then there should exist a proper communication or a written communication between the principal auditor and other auditor. We know that sole responsibility and other matters that is to be considered. It means that the significant findings and what adequacy of the work and the effect of the work on the principal auditor. These have to be considered, plus or whether they obtain evidence, which are the sources, whether internal control system is operating efficiently and effectively, whether they complied with legal regulatory requirements or statutory requirements, or they applied relevant essay in according to the situations, etc. That is also required to be considered by principal auditor, right? Then there should exist a written communication in between principal auditor and other auditor, which is also stating that, which is automatically it will derive what, there should exist what, a coordination in between the principal auditor and other auditor, which is stating that there should exist proper communication in between principal auditor and other auditor if they finds any information that is relevant to the work of other auditor. That is, if principal auditor identify any matter which is relevant to other auditor, he shall communicate, and other auditor to principal auditor. That is, there should exist that kind of communication in between them. Then comply with the statutory requirements. That is, we have already discussed the other auditor is required to perform audit procedure by complying with statutory and other requirements. Then other auditor shall complete his work on time. Then these are what indicate there should exist a proper liaison and coordination in between principal and as well as other auditor. Then principal auditor may also provide adequate advice to the other auditor. Suppose Y is having some confusion with respect of the area of work which is complicated or what which is more important. In that case, X may issue directions or advice to him, which is stating that principal auditor may advise to the other auditor on important and as well as critical areas. Okay, right? Then suppose principal auditor found it is necessary to ask with respect of certain matters to the other auditor. That is, principal auditor is not getting that much of clear-cut evidence or clear-cut point with respect of the work which has been performed by the other auditor on the component. In that case, principal auditor may ask other auditor. There should be written communication, right? So they may provide questionnaire. That questionnaire have to be answered by the other auditor. So if principal auditor found it is necessary to ask other auditor with respect of certain matters, the other auditor should answer to the questionnaire which has been provided by the principal auditor. Then what? Suppose we have already discussed, if principal auditor is arriving at a conclusion after providing adequate procedure that work of other auditor cannot be used or it is inappropriate, or principal auditor is not in a position to perform audit procedure on component which has been audited by other auditor. In that case, they may issue qualification to the audit report, that is modification to the audit report, or what, disclaimer of opinion. That is, it can be adverse opinion also. That is, because of this is what, putting a limitation on the scope of audit. So there should exist what, a proper liaison in between principal auditor and other auditor. There should exist proper communication in between them. So we have completed question number 5 and as well as essay 600. I hope you have understood this, right? So go through it and hear one time and just read our practice manual question. That is enough. And what they have some past exam question paper, I will discuss it later. Okay.